All right, so let's get started. Good morning to all. Welcome to the series 5 of our data management webinar. I would like to thank you all who took their valuable time for attending this webinar. The focus on today's webinar is on external archiving with DataConnectiva, which means we are going to give you some insights of how Salesforce data can be archived externally and how this archived data can be managed within Salesforce live ecosystem. So before we get started, our standard housekeeping activities. If you have any questions during the webinar, please do post in the chat. We will be taking all these questions at the end of the webinar. Our webinar is short and sweet. It's a 30 minutes webinar, wherein the last 5 minutes will be specifically, taking for Q&A. So as a quick introduction, my name is Harish Kumar. I am head of products, and joining with me today is Mr. Rakesh Rao, head of sales. Hey, Rakesh, good morning and welcome to the webinar.
Hi Harish, good morning. Thanks for having me. Hope this will be a good session for everyone joining, and this will be a very informative session, I hope, for the people who are joining. So welcome everyone.
All right, so let's get started. So as a learning objective, so what's the takeaway from today's webinar? Quickly, one, we're going to talk about the with Salesforce data storage. It's always not unlimited; it's limited. But then, how depending on what kind of applications customers are using, the Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, what are the general pattern that we see in terms of data growth within the Salesforce that we're going to talk about, and what are the storage options management that data management options where generally people or customers look for. Number two, we are going to talk about external storage. When they're looking at the external storage options, what are the challenges that comes with it, what are the drawbacks, and what are the general customer expectation when the data is kept in a separate storage system. That's number two. Number three, we're going to talk about DataConnectiva, how it has been positioned, and how it helps in this kind of scenario of handling the external storage, handling external data, handling the archiving data. So how it has been specifically connected is what we're going to talk about, its capabilities. And then we're going to take two use cases where we're going to talk about the customer challenges, and we're going to show you a live demo as well in terms of how certain aspect of this particular challenges were addressed by this application. So that is an interesting thing that we're going to talk. And the finally we're going to talk about native versus external. Native comes with a big object kind of thing, and external storage system. So what are the key things that each of these two different archiving solutions offers, and all depends on the customers use cases, their businesses, which one suits well for them. So this is what the entire learning object we're going to have covered in today's webinar. So this is the fifth webinar that we are doing on the data management. We started in February 2020 on this digital transformation, but all focusing on data management strategies. And all of these webinars we covered certain use cases of customers, and then this entire webinar was to help customers to see, hey, can you take out certain best practices that you can think out of it and try to put it on your data management strategy. So today's focus is on external archiving and external archiving into multiple different systems, different platforms, and we're going to talk about that today. All right, so starting with Salesforce data storage. As I said, depending on the Salesforce usage, depending on what kind of application customer using for different purposes, you will see that there are different types of objects that generally, we see data growth in. So when you're using Service Cloud, you'll see that the cases are the key component or key object, which generally, grows year on year, or sometimes it really just shoots up. And not only this, these are the only top 5 objects that we're talking about. We have certain scenarios where customers have their own custom object which also takes data storage in a gateway, but we are just talking in a generalized scenario. These are the few objects that generally go in a very the volume increases on the data. And then when we talk about options, what are the options the customer generally go for? One option is they review the storage, delete unwanted data, and sometimes if that is not solving the purpose, they go and buy an additional storage. Number two option is big object. Salesforce has come up with a big data system, which is more cheaper than the additional storage, than the standard storage that Salesforce provides. So that's option two. Option three is store externally. And this option three has been in practice for a while. And be it today or like 5 years back, any point of time when there is a data storage, it is always the technology team goes back and sees, talks to the business to understand, do you have any data that is you don't require now, and then they just take it and dump it either in a CSV or in a if somebody have a DBA, they just cook a new database and try to just dump all this data into external system and keep it there. And that is more like a cold storage, and it only kept it for audit reasons, and this doesn't really add up to the entire ecosystem of what the customer is doing. Let's say if you have a customer's 10 years worth of data, if that 5 years worth of data is actually archived in a cold storage, you generally don't get the holistic view. So let's talk more on this external storage part. The challenges that every business see is, hey, if I'm storing it externally, the configuration part of it, talking about, hey, the way the Salesforce architecture is in terms of objects, the master detail relationship, are they going to keep it in the same way? It doesn't happen. It is always they choose which object is taking a huge space. They try to just query on that and just dump object by object in a separate table and keep it, or download it in the CSV and keep it. So they don't take care of complex relationship. They don't talk about the policies that you set for the data or the records, right? It's just about the data. Oh, the volume is increasing, just move the data. So this data, once it is moved out of Salesforce ecosystem, it doesn't come under the purview of the policies that has been set on the data from the Salesforce perspective. And yes, definitely, when you talk about the drawbacks is once it goes out of the Salesforce ecosystem, it becomes very difficult for them to make any sense of this archive data or bring that data back, or the data integrity part of it. If there is, there are, let's say, cases with multiple histories, what happened to it, all the events that has been happened. So you cannot draw any conclusion or have this data integrity done, wherein once you are viewing those data, you're able to make a sense out of it. And for some reason you want to restore specific data, it's very tough because the DBA has to come into picture, load this into a temporary store object or a temporary table, then run a query on the top of it. So there's a lot of effort that is required if you really want to work with this archive data. So when you talk about expected solution that the customer generally look for is, if I'm storing externally, I wanted to view internally. Like we are talking about within the Salesforce ecosystem, I'm storing it externally, but is it possible that you can bring it back to the Salesforce ecosystem somehow? So can I do a search on this external data? Can I, view this archive data with the live system? So let's say I have a customer, and then we are talking about this customer, like let's say 20-30 cases for that particular customer, but out of which 10 cases has been closed maybe like 5 years back, and then the 10 cases something that has been worked. So if you want to get a customer 360 overview of what has happened to this customer, generally the service agent or the sales agent want to know a holistic overview. That's what they're asking, whether they can also view those simultaneously, those archived record within the same premises, right? And also a few other things like, can I query on specific records? Can I restore the data? So this is where the DataConnectiva is born, and we're trying to position it to see that, hey, how we can make a sense of this archive data, how we can bring the data to the customer, and how it can be really integrated with their Salesforce ecosystem. Because if I'm able to give the data back and able to make a real big use cases, because data coming back and able to view it is a big USP, because the data is not now in the live system. You're not really consuming the data storage, but since even if it is stored in a separate external system, you are bringing it like alive. It doesn't become a cold. And how we can achieve that? And that's why DataConnectiva, when it comes to external storage system, comes into picture. It works on multiple platform: Heroku, Azure, AWS. It can be your own platform as well, and it supports most of the databases: MySQL, Oracle, Postgres SQL, all the databases it supports. So let's talk about a little more on it in terms of how the DataConnectiva comes into picture. It's a solution that you can get it from the App Exchange. You can just download as an external as a managed package within your Salesforce ecosystem. Once that is done, you also need to have a gateway, and the gateway is something that you're going to host it in any of your platform, which can be AWS platform, it can be Azure platform, or Heroku platform. and this gateway internally has to connect with the database that you choose. You can choose Oracle, SQL, Postgres, any database you can connect with it. And once that connectivity is achieved, then the entire framework of the UI the Connectiva provides to the customer is amazing. What it helps you is it takes care of the entire backend part of it. It's any Salesforce admin or any general admin who knows about the Salesforce. They can easily come and configure objects. They can say, hey, these are the objects I want to do. I see that it is taking space, and then they can do filter conditions to it. And then in the backend, all the heavy lifting activity happens in the backend, and automatically the tables have been created. All the DDLs that happens, all taken care from the backend. We ensure that any schema changes that happens over the period of time is taken care. You can set up archiving policies, multiple archiving policies for different objects that the business have. You can schedule archiving. You can you actually leveraging your infrastructure and also your database and able to connect with the Salesforce ecosystem. That's what our DataConnectiva offers. So let's talk about a use case here now. We're going to talk about a technology company who has adopted this. They're into telecom solutions and energy solutions. Basically, they just do set up internet. They do solar system setup. So this particular customers do like more than 800,000 installations per year, and they cater to around 1,300 plus customers. So if you see, the service cloud has been their main application through which they're doing the business with multiple cases that they have, and they see that using service cloud with the huge number of continuous interaction that is happening, the data is just increasing day by day. And they also use a technology stack called AWS and Postgres, and they want to see can they leverage this technology. And that's where they talked about the challenges which they have. They see that, hey, the data growth is all about cases, as we all know, because they're using service cloud heavily, and they already 93% on the data storage. And when they thought about it, they wanted to see that, hey, from a data management, can we have an in-house solution? So when they think about the in-house solution, to build a solution like that, it looks like it is a highly expensive, and also it has to be maintained properly. And that's where we came into picture, and then we talked about what kind of archiving need they have. They immediately wanted to archive 50 GB of historical data, and then they also want to make sure that wherever they offload, they wanted to also run analytics on the top of it. And their key database which they were looking was Postgres as a SQL database. They want to do it. And this is where once we came in, we are able to offload most of the data immediately, and then that is where they saw that cost savings was amazing, with 85% of storage immediately available for them. And also they're able to run analytics on those data which they kept it in the Postgres database. And the key other activity which they allowed was they're able to view those archive data depending on certain scenarios they want within this Salesforce ecosystem. And predominantly they're using a service cloud. They also see a performance improvement as well. So now let's I will allow Rakesh, if you can just show a quick live demo on certain things of either setting up Postgres, or how some of the use cases that we did for it, which you can just throw some light through a demo. Rakesh, over to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Harish. It was beautifully explained, the use case and the DataArchiva application itself, right? So this is for this customer, for this use case, what the customer was looking at is Heroku as a platform and Postgres as a database. So so if you go here, so this is Heroku configuration screen. So where we run a WAR file, so which will connect to our Postgres database, right? So once this is connected, so we get a from the settings we get a endpoint URL. So this endpoint URL, what we get, so we'll have to put that in the name credential. So once we put this endpoint URL from the Heroku, so you are doing a handshake between the database and the DataConnectiva application itself. So once that is done, so you can ask what are the different types of authentication which you can take care of. So now we can implement different kinds of certifications, security certifications like SSL and other certifications, and also at a user level. So you can also give user-based authentication. So this is all taken care from the application itself, right? So now. So there are two types of archiving, so which we are looking at here. So one is a scheduled archiving, so which I will just quickly run you through. So maybe we have discussed at length in our previous discussion, but just to give you an understanding of how the schedule archiving works. So now what you have to do is you have to choose the objects and index fields. So objects automatically, when you install the application, the DataArchiva, DataConnectiva application in your org, so it will automatically pick up the all the standard and custom objects. So let's say, so you are looking at let's say order product. So this is one of the object which you want to archive. So then there are I will select a couple of index fields. This will help you in searching those data. And so there I can select only 4 objects. So once I do that, so then I will move to the next one. So now, so you can also encrypt the fields depending on your requirements. So let me select a couple of fields for encryption. So once I do the encryption, so then I will have to if you want to exclude some fields which you don't want to archive, so you can also do that. And then so it will all capture all the master data relationships. So and lookup relationship, all those things are taken care. So master data relationship is mandatory, because if you don't configure it, so you might have a chance of losing the data. So all those things are taken care from the DataArchiva console itself. So it is very easy to set it up, right? So once you do that, so you have a summary. So these are the things which you have configured. So child objects, how many child objects are there, what are the index fields, and then what are the fields which you want to encrypt, and fields to exclude. So right, so once this is done, so you can initiate an archiving activity. So from the console itself, where you have you can schedule an archiving depending on how you want to set this archiving. So maybe you can do it on a weekly, hourly, monthly basis, and then once you set the time, so the archiving process will run. So this is about the archiving on a scheduled way. So the other way of archiving is can we archive if there is a specific event and specific trigger? So yes, definitely you can do it. So for that, what we have is we have a process builder. So using process builder, so we have our archive. So for this case, to showcase to the audience, what we have considered is a case object, and then under case objects, whatever the archived archiving requirement was, whatever the case which are closed, so we want to initiate an archive. So whenever there's a trigger for a closed case, you have to initiate an archive. So that is where if you are looking at it, so here, so the value is closed. So once the pick list value is closed, so you will have to initiate an archiving. So now, so let's go to a case. So let's go to the case from the case record. So let's take example, so 1091. So this is a case which we wanted to archive. So now the status says new, and then I go here and then say closed. So once I say closed, so then automatically the process builder picks up this event, and then it initiates an archiving activity. So once this is done, so let me just refresh this here. So you should be able to see this archival initiated. So then once this is done, so you will also be able to see this, because we have already configured this to a external database, which is a Postgres database. So you will be able to see this here. So all these archived records are available here. So and then you can also see this under the live record. So under the related, if you go to the object, so you will be able to see this record under the live case itself, right? So you will so this is about one of the use case which the customer was very happy to the solution what we have provided. So customer is very happy with the solution which we have provided. So moving on, so the next use case is, so let me go back to the presentation and showcase the next use case. So this is the use case which is for one of our customer who's one of the top universities in the US, right? So they also had a challenge of data growth. So basically talking about this customer, so they are largest university in the US, and they have 20 plus different educational programs, UG and PG courses for their students. So and they had students across the world, 150,000 students who are from across the world. So they were using Salesforce extensively and for their service. So so this is one of the case which the challenge what they had was, so they had high growth data growth in terms of history, emails, cases. All those things are generating huge amount of data, so which was not even required currently in the live system. So that is where they thought of looking at a solution where how they can reduce the storage, as well as they were always buying additional storage because these were all generating a lot of data. So field history was something which was generating a lot of data, so, right? And one of the requirement was they wanted to see under the service console itself, service console app itself, they wanted to view the archive data as well. So even though the data is archived, so they wanted to view the data, so under the live object, right? Live record. So the main factor which the challenge which they had was when we are implementing the solutions, they wanted to archive initially offload 200 plus GB of field history data. So that is one of the major requirement which they had. So what we were able to do is we were able to do multiple APIs, and then we were able to initiate the archive, and then we were able to offload this data. So that I think we will explain it in the demo, so which is after this, right? And the value proposition is, as always, they were able to once they were able to offload 200 GB of data, so they had huge space available, and the ROI was immediate. And because they have offloaded the data, so they were able to save the storage, as well as the performance of the system has increased, right? So so this is one of the use case. I think for this use case, I will hand it over to Harish to showcase the actual demo from the system, how they were able to archive and able to get the value out of this. So over to Harish. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rakesh. Really insightful thing to show certain aspect of how Connectiva was set up and how we are able to use Postgres database and integrate with the Salesforce. One thing which I wanted to, with the limitation of time, I would love to show in this webinar is a certain aspect which not only this customer, we have certain other customers who have like 500 GBs plus worth of data, and they want to see that how they can archive it quickly. With the Salesforce limitation, it's always a challenge, right? So what is that I would love to show here is we had exposed an API for a customer wherein they can schedule internally multiple parallel jobs if they have it. Let's say here I'm just giving an example. If you see this this export service that we are exposed, it takes two component. One is the object name, which is being archived, so we give that information there, and then the filter that you want to put it. So filter is more about what kind of, let's say we say I want to archive this 2009 year worth of data. So you can have this configuration set and then run a cron job. Here I'm set it like a 23-45 minutes at this. We need to start it off. Asterisk means every month I want to do it, and every day I want to start this. So you can set as a cron job wherein you can run multiple within an hour if you want, run every hour certain jobs, and that can run parallelly. This the service help you to configure multiple objects. Even we give an option that even if you have a child objects, you can also run parallelly child objects as well. So this service has helped customers to run parallelly multiple jobs and able to archive certain all this data parallelly within the external system. And if you see once, the key thing is immediately where the customer needs it, how I'm going to get this data to the external system. Number one, that's a important part. And through these services and also multiple other options that whether it's a process builder or archiving that you can set up. Some customers are okay that our data only increases in a month, so you can set a monthly scheduler which automatically gives. But these are the certain additional things that we are providing to the customer when they have an initial volume that has to be handled. Now, if you see here, the key thing is, as I said, the service console is very important for the customers. And whenever the data is archived, where can they see it? And if you see, this is where they can see all the archived cases as well within the same service console. They can go to each specific cases, and these are all data which is coming from the archive system, the archive database. They can go and see all the detailed related information of that, and they can really make a sense out of it, because these are the service console agent where they interact with the customers. And if they have a 360-degree information of a specific customer, whether it is today's information or 10 years back cases, it always helps them to make a good decision for every customer. And that's the value add that bring here. So having said that, we talk about the last thing, which is the differences. We have two solution that we provide to our customers. One is the DataArchiva, which talks about big data, which is the big objects, and DataConnectiva, which is external system where customers can leverage their infrastructure and their database that can be leveraged and used it as external storage for archiving. And both has its own pros and cons depending on what kind of businesses that you're looking. Some customers are very so specific in terms of data not going out of the Salesforce ecosystem, in which cases big object plays a very good role. In cases where customer want to leverage their own infrastructure and wanted to also have a relational database kind of stuff where they can do multiple levels of reporting and analytics that they have to run on the top of it, then this relational database makes a very good option for it. But in either of the cases, the thing that we always talk about is the flexibility and the features that it provides. All the features is available, auto scheduling, data integrity, meta sync, restoring, encryption. All those things are the features, both the features of data archive and connectivity. It doesn't matter. Having said that, this is the end of it. I guess we'll have some time left for any Q&A. The next session that we're going to have, we're going to talk about not only data, because Salesforce talks about data and file storage. So how data and file storage archiving is something that can be collaborated for Salesforce is something that we're going to discuss in the July webinar. So please do subscribe for it. We'll love to have, we'll also present certain use cases for this session as well. So now we are all open for the Q&A. I know it was a short and quick session. We always want to keep it like that so that we don't drag it much. We try to cover a lot of stuff within it, but we are all open to a lot of questions that if you have, we will be taking it offline as well. And we also we can connect offline as well to understand more of your needs. We help the customer to do POC with the DataConnectiva as well. There is one question that I got is, as we are sending data outside Salesforce, how much time will it take to send that data, like 50 GB of also, will it do all the at the data same time, or it's a job that will send data in chunks? Yes. It is not asynchronous, it's asynchronous. It's all done through jobs. So you need to schedule it, and it's not about 50 GB is very a small amount of data. We handle more than 500 GB. So if you are asking me how much time it takes, it depends on the chunks that we provide. In certain scenario, let's say at one point of time, a job can handle 10,000 records, and we are able to process it within half an hour. But depending on the number of parallel jobs that you can set it up with it, and how much time this each jobs takes, we are able to do this within 1 or 2 days as well. One other question I found is, what is this DataConnectiva gateway component? This gateway component is like a web component that we are providing that can be that has to be like it's a JRE and Tomcat kind of component which come as a package, which has to be installed on the platform, and that is where the communication happens between the Salesforce, the DataConnectiva, and the database. So that's the gateway component that we're talking about. One other question is, can we write a custom wrapper class and consume the API provided? If you're talking about consuming the API, yes, that's what I talked about. Yes, if you have this API, you can use it anyhow, because that's something which has been exposed to the customer. So the customer has the liberty to integrate in whichever way they want within, and try to write a custom wrapper on top of it. Yes. Then what is the minimum requirement for hosting DataConnectiva? It's either a Linux or a Windows server is what we're talking about, with a minimum 4 GB RAM and 10 GB disk space. It all depends on if you're hosting in a network or anywhere, but these are the generic standard requirement. It can be a Linux or a Windows flavor of server where this can be hosted. Is there any specific database that we need, or can we pick any database of your choice? Yes, it's all depends on the customer. It is the DataConnectiva is a platform or a solution. We don't own the database. It is owned by the customer. And yes, we support any databases. So if you have any platform and any database that you want to connect with it, it's all about JDBC connection with the database name and then the required credentials that is to be integrated with that. Otherwise, it's all supports all SQL database. All right. So this ends up today's webinar. So thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate. You can connect us as well to our contact at DataArchiva.com. We'll be more than happy to assist, and have a great day. Thank you so much. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.